Hey everybody, welcome back to the 51st episode of Taps and Patience. I am one of your hosts, AJ with Design the Everything, here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity, and we have a special guest, the godfather of machining podcasting himself, Dylan Jackson from Proteum Machining.
Oh,
How you
geez.
doing?
I don't know if I could accept that moniker, but I do appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's awesome to finally get the opportunity to talk to you in person, if I'm honest. A little fanboying over here.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to chat with both of you. I was actually just listening to your 50th episode, I guess. Yeah, 50th episode today at work. So, yeah.
A little short one.
Yeah, it's great to get to chat with you guys now one-on-one.
Did we ever actually have a conversation at IMTS? I know we were both there.
I don't remember. It might have been much like me and Chris, where we were just ships passing the wind and saying hi. Like, oh, you're going there? Okay, I'm going over here. So see you later. That's how it happened with him and I. So I think I saw you at the Kern Within Tolerance meetup, maybe. Yep. But past that, I don't think we really got to chat much.
Yeah, I think we just kind of waved and walked by each other.
Yeah. So how's it going, guys?
Well, it's going good. I'm just trying to think of where to start. There's so much that you want to talk about, and then you get the person in front of you, and it's where do you even begin? So, I guess my question for you to start out would be, can you give me a little bit of a history of how your company kind of started and kind of how it's grown over time?
Yeah, for sure. So it started when Brad and I met in school for machine tool technology. We were both working at shops that we felt weren't doing things that we wanted to do. You know, we very naively thought we can do better than this, and but maybe we've gotten there. But we bought a machine, a used one, found a quick space, and for the next what it would have been 6 years, I guess, we worked part-time, full-time, the other 40 hours of the week, as I like to say, and just slowly have built the business. And then it'll be 2 years in November that I will have gone full-time, and Brad will be 2 years next June, I think.
Really? Yeah. That's kind of funny because my 2 years is in October.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, and then this is AJ's first year. Have you crossed your anniversary yet, or?
It depends on how you define the anniversary. I started slowly ramping down from full-time to not working in my old job over the course of 3 months. I started that transition, I believe, August 1st, and I ended on Halloween. So it depends on where you're defining your, the start of me being full-time.
Well, I gave my job 6 months notice. So I would say when you were full-time is when you're full-time, because I very much felt the same way, where I was like, well, my mind is no longer here, but I still have to show up for a little while.
I think I gave my job 1 month. So
yeah, I wouldn't recommend 6 months.
6 months is too long.
Yeah, I learned that in retrospect. I thought I was being nice and that they would hire somebody and I would train them for 6 months, and they waited until about the last month and then said, hey, can you write down 7 years or 6 years of knowledge in the next couple of weeks? And I was like, I'll do what I can.
Yep.
Did you slowly taper off, or did you just go cold turkey at the end of that 6 months?
Cold turkey. Yeah.
Okay.
I gave them 40-hour weeks right up until then. And I was like, hey, November 1st, I am no longer an employee here.
Yeah. I went from 5 days a week to 4 days a week to 3 days a week to 2 days a week.
Yeah, I didn't want to work out health insurance at the time. And so I was like, I've got 6 months to figure this out. And I think it still took me a couple months after that to figure it out. So that was really the big driver. It was like, I want to maintain full-time status as long as I possibly can.
Yep. So question on that transition. How was it for you going from what I'm sure was, you would be working 40 hours a week, and then also you'd be spending, 40 hours a week or whatever on this secondary outside job thing. At that point, it's not a hobby, but it's basically a hobby where you have your job and then you have your hobby job. But then all of a sudden, overnight, one day you flip a switch and you just have the hobby job thing. Did you see a gap in your life that needed to be filled in, or how was that transition from work plus other to just other?
It was super tough. I think it took me about 8 months maybe to really feel, I don't know if comfortable is the right term, but really feel into my own at the shop. Like I found my productivity was all over the place, my want to be at work, and like the fact that I could just go in whenever I wanted to. And now my jobs were the bosses. And that was a really, I didn't think it was going to be a very tough transition to make because I had been making so many parts for so long and, working super late hours. And I thought, oh, I'll just shift that 8 hours up 8 hours more and I'll just work normal. And it was really tough to kind of feel, I don't know, like feel like I just had to be there. I guess like there's no boss telling me you have to be there anymore. And there's no obligation. That it took a while for me to feel normal there.
It's both liberating and stressful.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you just start looking at your job, stack piling up and, start thinking, oh, yeah, I guess I have only worked 4 or 5 hour days for the last 5 days straight. Like that's why things are not going the way they're supposed to. Maybe I should start working more.
Yeah.
So it was tough.
Do you feel like building up until you quit allowed you to build up a good customer base before you made the jump, or do you feel like when you jumped you didn't have enough work or were looking for work, or pretty much when you quit your job you knew that you could fill up the shop and get in as much work as you needed?
Oh yeah, we had plenty of work. I think when I had first told my bosses that I was leaving, we had probably had enough work then, and it got worse as I got closer to my leave date. Like there was times where I think in 5 years while I was working there, that I was working there and at Proteum, I want to say I have done maybe 3 overnights, and 2 of them were in that last 6-month period where just things got so hectic and so busy that I went straight from my day job to the shop, worked straight till like 4 a.m., drove home, slept for 30 minutes, and then rolled out of bed and went back to my next, day of job. And it was hectic. It was really hectic. But yeah, we had already built a fairly decent customer base at that point. So it was still scary, but it was like, well, if things keep going this way, we'll be all right. We'll be able to figure it out. And I think in the back of our heads, we both thought, well, worst case, if this all blows up in our faces too, we have one machine loan. We could probably subsidize it with 0 work out of like excess in our incomes. It would suck, but we could do it. So the risk to reward there was kind of clear.
Yeah, I think I'm the only one out of you two that just quit cold turkey and started something from scratch.
That takes a lot though. Like I definitely applaud you for doing that, because that is truly scary. Of like, oh well, this is better work.
Yeah. Well, I had planned. I went into my job knowing that I like the day one when I got my interview, I told them, hey, I want to start my own business someday. And then after 5 years, I finally made that plunge. And so on some level, I've always been kind of planning for it, but I'd be lying if I said that I was ready. Because about 1 year in, we got to the point where basically I lived the first year off savings and got down to where I had like about a month's worth of money left. And so did my cousin. And then it was like, okay, we're either going to need to go get part time work or something. And around that time, we got our first major customer. Because at that point, it'd all been odd jobs from everyone that I could find that would listen to me, that would give us work, and some zometry work here and there. And then we got our major customer, and now that customer just gave us the biggest PO we've ever had in the company's history. So super
Congrats.
exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't remember what the phrase is or something, but there was some common thing where you kind of want things to be super terrible because it makes making a change very easy. Whereas I think for me, it was very hard because I really enjoyed my job and I liked the people I work with. There was little things here and there that I didn't like, but it was good enough that making a choice like that was tough. Whereas if I went in every day hating my job, it would have been so easy to just snap and be like, all right, you've got 2 days and I'm out. Like I'm done, So yeah, sometimes you want things to be terrible.
I had actually quit from my job once before, and then they convinced me to stay on. So like it was a horrible job. So I technically gave them 1 month, like 6 months prior to when I actually quit. I was like, all right, I'm out of here in a month. Like you guys can figure out what you want to do. Like I'm sick and tired of this. And then like the owner and I had a conversation, and he was just like, well, I really like you. I'd really like you to stay on. It's like I'll give it a little longer, but just know that my time here is not long. And then 6 months later, I was like, all right, you got another month, and then I'm gone because
Right.
I'm not sticking for this anymore. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot more sense then that you made the decision you did then.
Yeah.
See, I liked my old job. It was a good job. It was not difficult. Really, the only problem with it was that it was boring. But I liked the people I worked with. The job itself was relatively fun, but it was just kind of not at the pace I would like, and things just got repetitive. And it was all there wasn't much challenge in the design of stuff. Like it was all basically, all right, well, we have this tried and true template, just modify the template a little bit to do the exact same thing for a different company. And
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that can be equally as torturous though, being bored out of your mind. Like there's been jobs that I've had where I'm falling asleep at the desk because it's so monotonous. So I can understand that too.
so in Proteum, what has been your lowest point to date so far? Have you had any times where it's like, I don't know if this is going to work out? Have you considered ever had a point in your business where you've considered going back to a job?
I mean, I feel like if you own a business, it's weekly times that you're like, should I just go bartend? Like, I feel like I could make the same money. But on a more serious note, I don't know that there's ever been we've had a few, financial ups and downs and things where we've been way far extended because we've had so many large orders come through. But I'd say the low point, like if you ask Brad and me separate of each other, the low point that we both remember and still talk about was very early on. It was our first biggest customer that they're local to us. And during the run of their parts, it was like our first bigger order from them. Our machine shut down. And that was when the Kitamura had all of its board failures. And it was down for, I don't know, probably a month or month and a half or something. And that night, like parts were due the next day. And so we packed everything up. We went up to where Brad was working, and they ran a 2 to midnight shift. And so when everybody was done at midnight, then we broke down one of their machines and set up our parts and tried running them. And then they didn't have some of the tools we needed. And so we ended up breaking tools. And I think we got to like 4 or 5 a.m. and just gave up. And I just, emailed my customer and really apologized. And it ended up being totally fine. They were like, don't worry about it. We're actually not in a rush for these. Take your time, figure them out. Not a big deal. But for Brad and I, that was like the worst night because we were just, you're constantly making mistakes because you're constantly rushing to get this stuff done. And it was a really good learning experience. But I can almost guarantee you, if you ask Brad the same question, he would be like, "Oh yeah, this one day years ago was our low point," and it really was. It sticks in your mind as like the first, I guess, is the first failure as a company that you feel where you're like, we planned poorly, we didn't have backups, we don't have a backup machine, everything failed all at once, and it was just terrible.
Yeah. Me and AJ both recently have had our Tormox go down for periods of time when we were very busy, and it was very stressful for both of us.
Yeah, I heard. I mean, AJ with all your spindle issues and Harrison having to rebuild everything, like both of those sounded really tough. I mean, that was one of the reasons that we ended up buying the Brother and kind of jumping into that new machine territory was we had a few like these are must haves before we go full time. And the first thing on that list was we need a new machine with local support that can get us parts. No more screwing around having to fix anything ourselves. I need something that if something breaks, they can be down within 2 or 3 days and fix it. Because like when the Kitamura went down, it was a controller issue, and we reached out to Yaskawa, who bought Yaznak, and they were like, well, we can have somebody out in the next like 2 or 3 weeks, but I want to say with airfare, hotel, and per diem, it was like $1,500 just to get them to my door, not even including any kind of cost or anything else. And I was like, this sucks. And so, yeah, I think that's why we ended up going down that route.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's why I ended up not buying a Sile. I was basically ready to just sign the paperwork. But then, I kept having issues with this machine. And it's like with the Sile, all their parts are in China. At least with Tormach, they're in Minnesota or wherever they are. And it's like, I don't want to have a spindle go down and it, be 6 weeks to get here at a bare minimum. Like that would put me out of business.
Totally.
Yeah, same with us. We're so I know you've been looking for a building, but Dylan, but we actually got a new building, so I'll rub it in a little bit.
I
But
know. I've been hearing. Congrats. That's such a big step.
yeah, so we've been in my grandparents' garage shop, and they built a couple years ago. My grandparents moved down, and they built a shop, or they built a house with kind of a massive garage. And the deal is that they were going to have half of it, and my dad was going to have half of it for his wood shop. And basically, as soon as that building was built, was pretty close to the time that I got done, and I moved into a corner of that shop and slowly took it over. And now there's no space and no power, and so we're going to be moving out into a building that ironically belonged to an uncle of mine about 20 years ago. And so I have memories of it as a kid growing up, seeing my cousins and running around in there. And now we're going to be taking it back into the family, so to speak.
That's super cool. Remind me, how big is it and how much power does it have again?
So it is 40 by 80. And what we're currently in is a 40 by 40 garage, but we only have half of it. So we're in a 20 by 40. So it's going to be effectively an 8 times increase in floor space. And as for power, we've actually ironically been trying to work that out because it's smack dab in between two different cities, and it's got addresses from both cities. As we're trying to get the power in our name, there's like 3 or 4 different addresses, and what City Hall has on record versus what the electrical company has on record versus what some of the other bills are under. Like none of them are all matching up, and so we're trying to sort all that out. But 3-phase pole is about 10 feet away from the shop. So, and it
nice.
it has 3-phase, or it had 3-phase, because my uncle, when he owned it, he had a cabinet business, and he had a wide belt sander that had to run on 3-phase. And so he says that he had 3-phase there when he had that. But the power company says that it's currently not connected. So whoever took over ownership after him must have disconnected it, or turned that service off. And so they have to send someone out there to go see what type of connection is there.
But it's doable, at least. That's a big step up.
Yeah.
It's not like out here where I have, it's probably 2,500 or 3,000 feet to the nearest line that would have 3-phase. So there's just not a chance.
Yeah.
So are you going to go phase converter then for whatever mill you get next?
Me?
If I can't find one that runs off of single phase, then yeah. I'm taking a little bit of a break. I was all basically ready to buy that new machine. And then we had a couple kind of setbacks happen all at the same time. And so now I'm going to wait a little bit longer. But my current plan, and we'll see if this deal still exists in a couple weeks, but there was a in-stock CM1 that had all the options that I wanted, and it was like 10% off.
Nice.
But it'll be a couple more weeks now.
Yeah.
So what is the next big step for Proteum? Other than machines, like I know you're looking at some machine purchases that you've talked about, and that was covered in your 200th episode pretty well.
Yeah, I had a lot of questions about that for sure.
Other than just buying machines, what's holding you back?
Space. Really, that's the biggest thing right now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I guess.
Yeah, like we can't even. I wouldn't feel comfortable even hiring someone right now, just because of how tight everything is. Like 2 of my machines, one of them just faces like the room and the granite surface plate, but 2 of them are facing each other, and there is like just enough room in there that Brad and I can work on those machines and only bump into each other sometimes. And I can't imagine having like a third person in there running around trying to like cut material or help us out. Like it would be counterproductive, I think, at this point. So
okay, so
go ahead.
So you end up in a new space. I assume you drop in a new machine fairly quickly thereafter. What do you think would the business look like after that?
Well, I think getting a 5-axis will be like quite the game changer. So many of the parts we do have so many ops and fixtures into them that not having to do that is just where we need to be for rapid prototyping. And then that machine will, I mean, like the machine we want is going to be a 6-month lead time no matter what anyway for the options we want to add to it. And one of the options we want to add is automation prep. And that's because we want to buy into their HS Flex system eventually. And that'll give us, I think, 24 pallets, something like that. And you can add on up to 80 tools additionally as well. And so the whole thing is just to slowly build into a fully automated cell and then just replicate that.
So, what's your ideal part count for a system like that? Like, do you want to if you have 24 pallets, are you wanting to run 24 of the same part, like, or are you wanting to run like one part, 24 versions of different parts? Like, like I know you want to have that flexibility, but even with some sort of automation, there's probably still a limitation to how fast you can get stuff programmed and set up if you're running, a whole bunch of singles all the time.
My guess is that it'll be a large majority singles. I mean, right now, that's a large majority of our work is,
Oh, it is.
like 4 of a part is the higher end of our normal orders. Typically,
Okay.
it's like 1 or 2. The nice thing about 5-axis and something that we're starting to do on our 3-axis too, having 0 points and running like the container method, or even just having a 0 point that stays stationary is super important for that. Whereas like I can throw templates at a part, get 80-90% of it programmed right off the bat, and then just do the little fine tweaking. And I think as we go into 5-axis, it'll just be finding more templates to throw at parts to make them easier for us.
That's fair. That's something I need to get a lot better at as a job shop is templating everything. Because I pretty much still program probably 80% of the parts from scratch, and I haven't really built out very many templates. Though to be fair, part of the reason I haven't done that is because I'm always running up against the limitations of the Tormach, and so I'm always having to tweak, especially in stainless, on a per part basis to get the best speed out of it because I only have 2 horsepower and like as I like to say, it's about as rigid as a wet noodle. So um, I'm always up against different limitations with that. So
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I'd say like, I don't know. Normally, I'd say a large majority of our parts are aluminum, but it seems like everybody this year went 316 crazy, and so I've been processing a lot of that too. But even then, just taking a part that I know worked and then turning that into a template is not that hard to do. And like our aluminum template, I use every day. It's like probe stock, 3D adaptive, a flat on the top, an outside contour, and a deburr pass, and it's like that is most parts, like at least prismatic parts when it comes down to it. Like that handles a lot of it. And then it's like, all right, I throw some thread mill paths at it for like all the threaded holes. Maybe I have to do a little bit of normal programming, quote unquote, for like a weird slot or something. But it's like, all right, there you go. That top one, let's throw it on the machine, get it running, and then go back and do soft jaws and op two.
yeah, yeah. I that will be nice when we finally get a new machine and I can start doing some of that. Because I think the major reason I have to spend so much time on every single part is because even different grades of stainless from different suppliers, even like 303 I'll get from one supplier and then I'll get another supplier will have a different grade of 303. I'm running so close to my torque and rigidity limits that the different grades I can tell a difference when I'm cutting and I have to adjust them. And so there's
Oh,
like
that's
no
crazy.
point.
Yeah,
There's
that
like
would
no
make it really
point in,
hard.
yeah. So templating things like I've got stuff dialed in, but for the most part, but they're pretty slow, and so I'm always trying to figure out what can I do to speed things up. Because like I had 24 parts here recently, and it was all stainless, and it took like 4 days or 3 days to run them all. And they weren't very big parts. They were probably probably a 2x4x1. So they weren't very big, but they were also like a 5-op part. So combination of like material removal and rigidity and how many ops they just took forever to run.
Stainless in general is not a specifically fast stuff either. Like I'm running some 17.4 right now, and it's still not quick, especially with the tolerances I'm having to hold in it. And it just is what it is. You know, you quote for it and account for it in scheduling and call it a day, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I actually picked up some job shop work, which isn't something I normally do. But like we were saying earlier, this is kind of a low point for me right now. I'm really, really low on cash due to some things that happened with like Kickstarter taking forever to approve our project and yada yada. But I'm doing aluminum right now for the first time in ages, and it is so nice compared to all the other hard stuff that a lot of us have to deal with on a regular basis. It's kind of made me rethink a lot of my strategies going forward because up until now it's always been avoid aluminum because everybody can do aluminum.
Right. I remember you saying that you were thinking about a shop rule of no more aluminum in the shop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea, but not on this machine.
Aluminum's nice. It really is very quick to turn around prototypes. Like I'll even steer people away from like 1018 or something and say, well, 7075 material price will go up, but runtime and programming and all of that will go down, and you'll probably break even and get your parts sooner. So you decide. They have very similar strengths, so it's up to you.
So, just out of curiosity, how many parts per week do you process roughly? Because I've heard you get a lot done. I've heard you talk about it, but I'm just curious. Like, if you were to put like an average parts per week that you get done, what would that be?
Parts or part numbers?
We'll just go with flat parts, because
That could literally be like 1 to 100. It
oh
really depends.
really?
But like part numbers, I try to shoot to take on orders that I can accomplish in a day. So like typically, if Brad and I can hit 10 new part numbers a week, that's a really good week. And like probably we usually fall in like 3 new part numbers a piece a week, I'd say is a typical week for us.
So when you say when you're trying to do new part numbers, I'm assuming you're trying to get new customers or new parts from existing customers, or
New numbers from existing customers. I'd say I probably send on the low end 4 or 5 quotes a week, on the upper end 10 or 15, and get at least 80% of them. And everything we do is 2 to 8 day turnaround for the most part. And so like when I say I quote it, it's like I quote it today, I get the job tomorrow, material is in for McMaster the next day, and then it ships the next day after that or something like that.
so with you going that fast, do you try to stock any material, or do you pretty much just only buy whenever you need it?
I mean, we have remnants from bar. Like I'll always just buy a bigger bar for McMaster because shipping is going to kill you anyway on that. They're like, oh, 1 foot bar for $15 or a 2 foot bar ships for $15. And it's like, all right, well, I'll spend the extra $10 and have an extra foot around. But for the most part, we just order from McMaster, local, Coast or IMS or something like that if we need it quick.
Man, I would highly recommend trying to find people in your area that sell material other than McMaster, because I started out heavily on McMaster, and I've been trying to find as many suppliers as I can for different materials, and I've seen material prices cut in like a third of what they are on McMaster. Now, sometimes you have lead time issues, and sometimes you have other issues that I completely understand. But if you have consistent customers and you know the type of parts you're getting, and you can, if you and you can be relatively comfortable, and I don't know, maybe you can't, but with my customers, I know that having certain types of materials on hand, like if I'm having to buy material on McMaster that's over 4 foot, 4 to 6 foot, it's much cheaper to just try to talk to a local customer or a local supplier and just get a 12-foot stick, and I have a lot of extra material on hand, and it costs me the same, if not less, than getting it through McMaster.
So we quote everything just from McMaster regardless, just because really it comes down to lead time and not having to deal with local people, because like IMS and Coast are local to us, or at least in Phoenix, and IMS is in Tucson, and they are just absolutely terrible to deal with.
Oh,
Like
okay.
I order out of the IMS Phoenix branch because Tucson is so bad that literally every time they screw something up. Whether it's like they'll say, "Oh, your order's ready," and you go and sit in their parking lot and dial the number that says you're in your parking spot, and then 45 minutes they bring it out, and you're like, "Oh, so you just cut it? It hasn't been ready this whole time." Got it. Okay. And then
Okay.
it'll be, out of square and terrible or whatever. But really, the other reason is that my customers send me such a wide variety of parts that it's really hard to nail down. Like in the same week from one customer, I got a 316 part that was like 100 thou by 100 thou by 200 thou with a bunch of tight little features and tiny tools. And then also a 316 part that was like 6 by 6 by 4 or 6 by 6 by 3. And it's like those
Oh,
are
wow.
two drastically different vendors if I wanted to order locally, and B, I wouldn't trust them. Like the last time I tried to order a 316 locally, they said, "Oh yeah, it'll be square and perfect and blah blah blah," and then they delivered flame cut 316, and I'm like, "Cool." So I have a pillow block now that's absolutely useless, and we talked about saw cutting it. So what happened? And then I spent 3 days arguing with them of like, "No, you need to send us pictures to prove that this was bad." I'm like, "You cut it. What do you mean I have to send you pictures that you flame cut it? Like this is just refund me. Like let's just nip this in the bud." And so yeah,
Okay.
it's just we've started just going to McMaster because I don't have to deal with it. If they lose an order or they damage something in shipping, I message them and they immediately send another one, and there's no screwing around anymore. And like, yeah, it's more expensive, but my customers pay me to be on time, not to be cheap, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Well, if something magical happened and you could get 50% off on all of your materials, like starting tomorrow, would that even be a drop in a bucket for your business? Do material costs, like, are they a material portion of the price?
No.
Okay.
They're not. Very very rarely, I guess my like litmus test for a job is like material has to be like a quarter of the job, but that's only on really expensive material. Very often it's, I don't know, a tenth or a 15th or a 20th of the job cost. Like they're paying for me to rush something. They're not paying for $10 in aluminum.
Okay. That's fair because some of my parts can be if I was ordering them from McMaster, McMaster would be over 50% of the cost of the job. And because we'll do big stainless steel parts or big aluminum parts, and if I got a part that's like a 8 by 8 by 1 aluminum piece that's basically a glorified gusset, then and the parts, 100 maybe $200. By the time I buy the material from McMaster of that size, that in a usable state, it's like, okay, well, there's all my money in
Right.
material.
Yeah.
And and I guess another question would be, I serve the food industry mostly in my area. So what's your main type of customer work that you do?
I guess consumer electronic and aerospace maybe are the best ways to put them.
Okay, so they have some deeper pockets and probably don't care so much for cost if you're fast and good.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to is, are my parts here when I need them and are they perfect? And it's like, I can guarantee those things. I can't guarantee they'll be cheap, but they will be there when you need
Okay,
them.
yeah, that's fair. So
Yeah, but you were asking earlier before we started about like eras in the business, and I think that that's been like the most recent thing was the last couple of years of kind of finding our own and realizing this is where we want to be. Like there's a market for this kind of machining. It's very stressful and takes a lot out of you, but you can make a lot of money really quickly with it too. So it's just kind of a trade off.
yeah, yeah, my area is more. It's almost a race to the bottom on some sense, but you also get a lot higher volume of parts. So like the PO that came in is I have like 900 parts from one customer that's due in like 2 months, and so it's a lot of parts and it's a big chunk of cash if we can get them all done in time. So, it's like about 100 individual part, or no, it's probably 80 different types of parts, but about 900 in total. So the average is around the 12 of each type.
That's great.
So somewhere in that neighborhood. And so I'm excited because that should allow us, hopefully, the cash flow to put a down payment on a bigger machine to upgrade from the Tormach.
Are you still thinking a Doosan?
Doosan or Haas, and maybe I can get some input from both of you on this because I'm torn. So we went with a Haas lathe, a Haas ST15 for our lathe, and we were trying to decide that between that and a Doosan. And I'm regretting not going with the Doosan, I think, now, after doing it for a little while. Not that the Haas is a bad machine. It's been a great, fantastic lathe. But I think from a quality perspective and a rigidity perspective, that and a noise level, because the STs or Haas's lathes in general are all pretty much belt driven, so they're really loud. And having a direct drive would really cut down on the noise level. I feel like the Doosan makes so much better of a lathe than Haas, but Haas makes pretty good mills. I know Doosans are better, but my roadmap master plan is I want to get something in a Haas VF3 YT size, or a Doosan. I think a Doosan equivalent would either be like the SVM 5100 or the D&M 5700, either one of those. And what I would like to do is I'd like to have two or three vices on the table, and then a 5-axis trunnion, and maybe eventually a UR robot to load and unload parts. And my hesitation with the Doosan has more to do with the integration of a 5-axis trunnion and a UR robot. Because Haas, I can go to my Haas HFO, and they've done installs with all three from start to finish. And so they're just one person involved in the whole process. Versus Doosan, I might get a Doosan machine. My local suppliers may or may not have ever dealt with installing a 5-axis trunnion, and who knows what company it's coming from. And then I've already talked to them about cobot integration, and Doosan has their own cobot, which I would be interested in. But talking to my local Doosan reps, they haven't ever dealt with it, and they haven't ever messed with a Doosan cobot arm or a UR arm or any kind of integration of any type that I can figure out. And so I would like a Doosan because I feel like it's a better built machine. But from an integration standpoint, and going back to AJ's point, being able to get parts if things go down, and service side, it's really pushing me towards the Haas side.
I've never owned a Haas. I probably will never own a Haas. I've run a lot of Haas's. I know a lot of people love them. I am not going to spend a lot of time shit talking them, but I've noticed a lack of rigidity and a lack of build quality. And I know from what I've heard from many people, even locally with Haas's, their service has definitely gone downhill in recent years. Like I had a friend locally, his pull stud on his machine snapped. And I want to say they said, oh, it'll be like 4 to 6 weeks for us to get you a new spindle. It's like,
wow.
I couldn't do that. Like if somebody told me 4 to 6 weeks for a new spindle on a machine that I'm paying, a few $1,000s a month on, that's going to kill me. But also I'd take a long look at cobots too and talk to some people who have used them, because they're URs, especially like UR won't even publish mean time between failure numbers because the joints do go bad fairly quickly, especially in a machine tending application.
Well, we went and toured a company who's had one running for over a year, and got to see their integration with Haas. And so I got to talk to the applications engineer who did the install, programmed all the parts, and has been providing service for the last year on the whole system. And
Oh, they're
so
they're
far,
super
it's,
quick to program. Don't get me wrong, but it's the joints that go bad eventually,
yeah. No,
lifting that much weight, and
I hear
they're
you there.
the joints cost basically if you divide the cost of a UR into three, that is what a joint costs. At least that's what my reseller told me a few years ago. And so
So
replacing a
let,
$15,000 joint every couple of years just feels like it's going to be a pain point pretty quickly.
so if you had to step into my shoes and you were looking for a machine that would be, let's just say 150 to 200,000 max for your, that would be your top ceiling budget, and you're looking for a system where you could have 5-axis integration and some kind of automation solution. Is there any other brand that I should look at or consider?
I mean, a Doosan would probably be where I was looking as well. As far as I I would be worried that you're asking a lot out of a sub $200,000 machine to be that much of a Swiss Army knife.
Fair,
Like I
but
think that it
it's
can do
that
a few
well,
things really well.
yes, but to be fair, that's just for the initial machine. Like the robot and the 5-axis trunnion are going to add costs on top of that. So I'm going to start out with the 150 $200,000 machine, and then I'm going to add to it as the company grows. So I'm not going to. I mean, if I invested everything up front, you're probably talking closer to $350,000 $400,000 probably by the time everything's all said and done. And at that point, I realized there's a lot better options that you could probably go up to at that price point, probably in the direction you're probably leaning. But at the same time, I need to get out of the Tormach and go to a bigger machine. And my customers, I probably don't need the rigidity and the accuracy of the super high ends because everyone's chasing cheaper parts rather than high precision.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I mean,
and at
maybe you should be looking at a pallet changing machine then versus anything.
Okay. I do want to get into 5-axis though, because like I do have parts that are like 6 to 8 ops, and I'm just sick and tired of that. It's too many setups, and the reason I want to go with a something like a VF3 with a trunnion is because I will probably use the 5-axis trunnion 90% of the time, but I do get parts that are massive that I would take the trunnion off and convert it to just a flat table to do those parts.
I would question if those parts are worth taking then.
They pay well.
Yeah, but do they pay you enough in hours to take off a 5th-axis trunnion and then reset it up?
If there's enough of them, because some of the parts that we're looking at is I have a customer who's coming up with a machine that he's going to be doing, and he has like it's a whole different level of volume of parts. So we go from 12 parts, you know, on a couple machines to 200 to 1200 parts. And at that point, yeah, I'll take it off.
Yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to get at is like the best thing we ever did for our company was specializing and saying this is what we do, and then feeling comfortable saying no, this is not what we do, and telling people to go elsewhere. And I think that like if you're trying to do onesie twosies alongside of 2,000 plate work, like that's you're gonna butt heads with yourself just trying to do both well. And that's before you buy a machine, I would just decide what you want to do. Like be like, this is what we do really well and do it really
Mm-hmm.
well.
To be
Harrison,
fair,
have
that's
you?
go ahead,
Sorry to talk
AJ.
over you. Have you considered instead of going straight to the VF3YT with, or whatever it is, with the 5-axis capabilities? Have you considered just starting with like a pretty bare bones VF2, walk out the door for like 65K just to get something started, and then you can go to a nicer machine as your next machine purchase, a bigger Doosan, whatever.
Have I considered it? Yes. And I guess you could say I've done the Apple stair step my way up, because if I'm going to do that and then I option it out to what I would need and want, I go, well, at this point I'm close enough to the other machine that I might as well just go for that. And so I started out this journey in the Haas VF2 arena. That's where I kind of started. and then I've talked myself out of it over time. Into because I feel like I can do all the work that I would do with a Haas VF2 and spend a little bit more money, get a VF3, stick a trunnion on it, and still have the table space of a VF2. And like I said, probably not going to do a whole bunch of that big plate work, but I would like to have the capabilities should the need arise. And to put a fair point, I'm not opposed to buying new machines and specialize in different things over time. The problem is we're so new in the company, and I only have one customer, that I don't want to specialize for one customer before I've figured out what other customers are in the area. Because like I said, I've only been doing this for 2 years. I
Right.
jumped cold turkey. I have no idea what type of job shop work I can get from the different places around here. And I don't want to become so specialized on one customer that if I ever lost them, that I would be hosed.
Right. Well, I would argue then that a 4th axis is a better buy for you than a 5-axis trunnion. Because like those trunnions are actually really limiting on part size. Like that engine block that Saunders did in a video years ago, like that's the ideal part size for something like that, or like a little bigger than that. It's like a 3x3 cube, maybe.
But most of my parts are small. Like they're not massive.
Right, but a 4th axis lets you do, like, you could hang it off the table, so you never have to move it, and then also you could do long 4th axis stuff with a tailstock or like a sub support, and be able to do larger stuff and grow into larger 4th axis work if you needed to, and you still get the multi-axis, less ops. It's not as less ops as a 5-axis, but I'd argue
Yeah.
that, like, unless you know what your part size is, like that would be buying a UMC 1000 and then doing parts that are in like a 2-inch by 2-inch cube. Like you'd be wasting all of this space and dealing with clearance issues and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. I've got a pretty good grasp on the parts that I've been receiving currently from my current customer, and 5-axis just makes too much sense for those. Like 4-axis would get me almost nowhere with those parts. I don't feel like it'd get me very far. It'd get me further down the road. It would reduce my ops by a certain amount, and I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about it some. But I don't feel like it's going to get me near as far down the road as a 5-axis would.
That's fair.
And I feel like that's the way the market is going, and I want to get my hands on a 5-axis as soon as possible, because I feel like there's very little for one in my area. This is part of the reason I started the business in the first place. I feel like there's not a lot of young people going into it in my area, and a lot of the business that around here are old. And if I can get myself into 5-axis work, I've had a lot of customers who've expressed interest in that I don't do a lot of stuff for, but people I've talked to. And so that could become an area of specialization at some point if I can get the more complex, smaller parts.
Gotcha.
And so I feel like that's a hole in my particular area that I could fill because I'm young. I feel like I can learn it. I feel like I can master it a lot faster than a lot of these other shops can.
Yeah, no, I think those are great points for sure.
So not to downplay any of your input, because I do greatly want it. Like I want people to push back on me, because if you have an idea and you're not willing to be challenged on it, and have people push back and offer criticisms and viewpoints, then you become like become like some people I've dealt with in the past, become very pig-headed and won't listen to reason, and I don't want to do that. Like these are very valid points, and I am second guessing some of the stuff, and I probably will like take some of this to heart and think about it and probably change up my opinion.
Well, and also this is all blind of your business. Like I've never seen the parts you make. I've never,
Oh yeah.
A lot of this would require at least a shop visit for me to like have real conviction of like, no, you're wrong.
Oh yeah.
So this is just generic, like, hey, I think maybe at least think about these things.
No, and they're all very good points. And I love it when AJ pushes back on me on all the stuff, because he thinks everything I do is dumb. So
Not everything.
No, the reason I'll go for it.
I was just gonna say I've been telling him to focus for years.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. I wish that and somebody telling me it years ago wouldn't have made it stick, but learning it the hard way, saying no is the best thing you can do for your business. Like saying no, I'm not the right person for this, or you designed a part that I don't want to make. Like, I haven't said it quite like that, but I have told customers like, hey, I'm not confident in any of these features the way that you dimension them, so you're gonna have to take it somewhere else. And like, that's okay. They very much value that kind of opinion versus, yeah, I'll take it on, and then either I'm late or the parts are bad or anything like that. Like, I will value like that kind of truth over any kind of issues that would be a black stain on my company any day, all day.
To be fair, I have said no to both of your guys' points,
Good.
and I've never missed. I've never. I have always. I've always turned in parts without having people yelling at me. Like I've never. I've always delivered on time, or in the very rare occasions where I have been past a due date, I have communicated with my customers, and it hasn't been a big deal. Um, but I always accept jobs that are kind of on the limit of what I'm comfortable of doing, and then that becomes the new normal, and then I can grow, and that's how I've grown as a machinist. Because I think this is probably the difference between me and both of you is you guys have had a long time to figure out what you specialize in, and I quit my job one day and started a business, and it was sink or swim. And I think some of that could be the difference in mindsets between us is that I had to go out and I didn't know what type of work I was going to be getting. I didn't know who my customer base was going to be. I didn't know any of that. And so my survival depended on my flexibility and ability to get anything done because otherwise the business would not have survived the first year. And so that has been is what has been successful is flexibility. And so that is what I've been using to grow the business. And so that is why I focused on flexibility for my next big machine. Not to say that I wouldn't buy a machine that wouldn't be highly specialized because that's what I've always wanted, but I don't have a customer or a job shop base or an idea of what normal looks like yet. If that
That's
makes
fair.
sense.
No, and realistically, Proteum was very much like that in the beginning too. Like we did everything from like aerospace panels. Like there was a company locally that stamped out stuff that went on, I think they were like Learjets or Bombardier or something like that. And we would put in the tight tolerance features for like the switches and stuff. And we did everything from like that to I did design work and rough prototyping for some lady locally who wanted to do like a billet urn for company. And like it never went anywhere. But I totally understand that. Like it took me a long time to figure out what I wanted to do and what I just had no interest in. So I completely understand that.
Yeah.
All right, changing topics from the whole attack Harrison section. We do
Yeah,
have
sorry about that,
segments, as it
Harrison.
turns out.
I appreciate it. I want the feedback.
All right, so I have a question for Dylan. This is something I've been trying to ask more machinists. My carabiners, I'm sure you're at least somewhat familiar with them. Are those actually a hard part, or do I just make it hard?
Having
Be
never
honest.
made them, they don't look that hard. By the way, though, your newest ones look so much better. Like night and day better. I cannot tell you. I think honestly, fearless feedback. I think you should just drop the tactical ones and only make the new ones because they look so much better. And like having the integrated side to side protection or whatever is well worth the added cost or whatever. They are so much better. Like congrats because they really are nice.
Yeah, I learned a lot there. Have you seen one of the new not for climbings?
No.
Okay, so the old not for climbings that were laser cut, those are completely gone. The new not for climbings are basically the exact same carabiner, except instead of the scales, they have slots in them.
Oh, so I was not saying get rid of it because they didn't look as good. I was saying get rid of it because you have too much. Your product line is too close.
Oh, yes. Okay.
That's why I was saying get rid of it. I was saying that like this one, I think is the superior design. And I think that if you're going to keep one and then just open up your mill for more time, just make more of these. And again, I don't know what your sales numbers look like. Maybe people like the tactical ones more, but like if I was going to rebuy one or buy another one for another key ring, this would be the one I buy for sure.
We just finished up the Kickstarter fulfillment, which means we are now, for the first time, able to get the not So Tacticals onto our website, and we will see what the sales do.
Yeah, I'll be interested because I really like the scales and I like having that side to side protector, whatever you're calling that design feature, built into the scales. It's really nice.
Yeah, I agree. It's a much better design.
But
Okay, so
I don't know how hard they are or not. Like you kind of designed it so you're doing a lot of slotting in titanium, which is just not an easy thing alone. But like the part itself, I don't know. I haven't dealt with machining a lot of flexures in titanium. Like I feel like you kind of really gave yourself a challenge there for your first product, or like first new product in a while. And I'm glad to see that it's working out now. But yeah, when I started seeing your plates bow up like 5 inches from the plate, that was truly terrifying to me.
So I've started having some reliability issues again. And the only variable that I can tell that is different is it's a different batch of titanium. And so I'm just thinking about, I'm so frustrated with these not just working. And I'm starting to think about ways that I could rebuild my process from the ground up. How would you do that? What would you do?
I don't know, because I assume that your process reliability stuff is stemming from the excess material bowing up and breaking stuff.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's the tough part. Because like I look at them and I'm like, oh, okay, I would cut the slots and then have some kind of plugs that go in the slots that are like giant washers, basically, and then bolt them down and then route out the whole part. But that would still leave you with these giant slugs of titanium coming up and smacking your spindle. I guess I would probably just start adding screws everywhere, like as many screws and hold downs as I can, which is what you've been doing.
Yeah. I think each carabiner right now has 6 screws holding it down, 2 for that centerpiece, like the cutout that gets removed, and then 4 on the carabiner itself. Then there's a couple odd random screws in the stock.
Yeah.
Have you considered going back to Send Cut Send and getting laser cut blanks that just had screw holes to where you can do all the internal work first and then screw down the internal side and then do the outer profile?
I have. My issue with that is Send Cut Send has proven in the past to be inconsistent on the thickness of the titanium they sent you. That was what killed me on the first Not for Climbings. Is when I originally prototyped them, they were almost a quarter-inch thick, and then when I bought the production run, they were, I don't know, whatever they were, about 3/16 or so. And technically, the material I bought, they called like 3/16, and those first carabiners were actually the ones that were out of spec, and the production ones were in spec. But the production ones were so floppy, being so thin, that they like to pop open. And my prototype ones never had that issue.
I'm just curious. This is kind of a non sequitur. How do the coin sales compare to the carabiner sales? Not in monetary, but like as in terms of like percentages. Like, do you see a bigger return and more interest in those than the carabiners?
The the coins seem to top out at about 50, 60, 75 units whenever I come up with a new design.
Okay.
The cubes are actually a pretty good indicator of that because they're the first one where we haven't had a cap on the quantity. And it really quickly went up to about 50, 60 units sold, and now it has just been kind of flat. So
Yeah, because I wasn't joking. Like mine's on my desk and I play with it all the time. But yeah, I was just sitting here looking at both of them. I'm like, because it seemed like the coins are infinitely easier for you to
they
make.
they are infinitely easier, but I think if I made too many of them too fast, everybody would get bored, and I just wouldn't sell any at that point.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because you probably didn't buy the second coin, did you?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. See, so some people have bought all of them. They have, my series of art all the way through. But I think if I do it too much, it'll just kind of get overwhelming and boring. But yeah, they're so much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
I
you
don't know.
can
Those
nail down
carabiners are
the
tough. Oh, sorry, Harrison.
no, you're good. I was gonna say if you can nail down the carabiner design, you could become maybe like the carabiner version of a steer because he
Hmm.
does those straps, and so it's kind of functional art. And I feel like anytime you can come up with a product line that is functional art, think knives or like a steer or anything along those lines. If you, I know a lot of your stuff that you do is the not so tactical, not for climbing, and it's not really a strength thing. But if you could find a way to integrate strength and art and make it hold, I don't know, 200-300 pounds, enough weight that it's useful beyond just being a keychain, but also attains some of that aesthetic where you can charge maybe a little bit of a higher price, where you don't have to make quite as many, and maybe not do them out of titanium at that point, but still have them be something that makes sense. I think if you drove in that direction, you'd probably find a lot more customer base in the outdoor market, like the people that are biking or hiking or all that kind of stuff.
There's probably more volume in that market, but if you look at like the outdoorsy carabiners, they're actually like shockingly cheap. Like you can get a 6-pack of climbing carabiners for like $50, which I find kind of mind blowing.
Have you looked at doing these out of like smaller slugs, like getting like the net outside shape of this plus 100 thou water jet, and then having a fixture that you place these on, like has like two holes through there, and then like 100 thou all around, and then you locate them just with the screws, get close, and then you do the outside and then throw on some more screws or something and then do the inside.
Yeah, so I originally made them out of the laser cut blanks. I have not looked into other people other than Send Cut Send, and for some reason, as soon as I started adding more features to the carabiners on Send Cut Send, the price skyrocketed. Like I think I actually found a bug in their pricing algorithm when I first made the carabiners because they were so cheap.
Right. Well, so I'm saying leave the entire center here solid.
Yeah.
Like just have like more or less a jelly bean worth of titanium, and that way you still have to finish everything, but you don't have these strips of loose titanium that come up and break your tools.
Yeah, I'm definitely not opposed.
Yeah, I just don't know what the economics of it are.
Or could you get titanium rod? I know you can't really get titanium sheets super thick, I don't think. But could you do the salami slice method with like a bar of titanium? And have you figured out the cost per inch? Because it might be really expensive material to buy in a bar, but if it's like, under $10 an inch or something like that, I don't know, however much it would have to be, but because you're only cutting what, a quarter inch, so even if it was like $40 an inch, and you can get or $30 or I don't know however much it would be, but some dollar amount that would seem ridiculously expensive, you're taking pretty thin slices off of it.
I want to say I couldn't find appropriately sized titanium bar when I first looked at that. I was able to find a round bar, but that's just super, super wasteful, and was very expensive. I don't remember finding a rectangular titanium bar that was the right size. Titanium seems to be cheapest and most common in sheet. And I get pretty good prices on the sheets that I'm buying.
Yeah, otherwise, the only thing I could think of was some kind of stress relief, like annealing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how well titanium takes to that either. Like it could be a fool's errand for all I know.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. But yeah, I was doing some other things. I don't know if I can reach from here. I was doing these parts as job shop stuff, and this is basically the same process, but these were so much easier than the carabiners. And I think it's just because they're mostly solid.
Is that also titanium?
Yeah, it's titanium.
Oh wow, cool.
They're slightly thicker. And I actually don't think this is necessary now that I've done it, but I kind of I'm doing them a 2-op part as a 3-op part, where those right now are basically what I'm calling blanks. I don't have the outside profile to the final dimension because I wanted to come back with them held more securely and be able to do that good finishing pass. But the finish on my roughing pass looks good enough. So
that's awesome.
I don't know. Carabiners are cursed. That's what I'm going with.
I mean, you literally made them a spring, so
Yeah.
You've kind of done this to yourself.
I'm going to start a tuning fork brand next.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, Harrison, do you have anything else for us?
Oh, I'm sure I could come up with some stuff to keep us talking all night. I don't really want to let Dylan go.
I am happy to answer anything.
Oh, man. I'm sure there's some question that I've always wanted to ask that I'm listening to your podcast and then I'm start shouting at no one. I have a question. It's just if I can dig those questions out because it's been so long. I've always wanted to talk to someone who actually runs a Brother Speedio. They come up all the time, but I've never talked to anyone who actually owns and operates one on a daily basis. I've can you tell me anything about it that I probably haven't heard from anyone else? Or from
Probably
listening?
not. I personally, like, the way I describe it to people is, for the right parts, I don't think there is a single better machine out there for 100 grand. But that's if you have the right parts. Like,
Okay.
you don't want something with a super long aspect ratio. That's BT30, even with a dual contact, it's not going to want to swing a really long tool. Like, that's just the nature of the beast. So, like, don't, if you're doing stuff that's got like 3-4 inch sidewalls, the Brother's not a good part or a good machine for you, at least if that's your bread and butter stuff. But if you're doing like, aluminum parts or even stainless parts that are like relatively short aspect ratios, I really don't think there's a better machine out there. Like, my machines hold fantastic tolerance. They're uncomped as far as thermals go, and I mean, I'm not going to say like the cliche of like they hold tenths all day, but like they really do hold pretty incredible tolerance and are really, really reliable machines. So
So
it's hard to poo poo on them too much because they really are. I mean, obviously I love them. I have 3 of them now, but
oh man, that's awesome. So what would you say is probably the thickest part you would feel comfortable running in stainless?
I mean, I did some 316 stuff that was like 2.5 inch tall sidewall, and like it
Oh, okay.
wasn't amazing. Like the finish came out great because it was slow, but it wasn't something that I was like wanting to do more of. Maybe like inch and a half tall, inch and a half or 2 inch tall is like about what I would want to do in stainless max.
Okay. I think we got the tallest stainless part that we're about to do, and I think it's right around 2 inches tall. And I'm not doing it on the Tormach. I teach part time at a local university, and I'm going and stealing their mini mill. I've already warned them that I'm coming in to make like 10 parts. So,
Awesome. There you go. Yeah.
because
I mean, there are definitely things that Cat 40 or, a bigger taper excels at. And like longer stuff is just one of those things. But man, like short stuff, I can rip through material like no other. I don't really have to worry about tolerances all that much. Like with good tool holders and good tools, I more or less know my parts are going to be within a couple thou, uncomped, checked. Like they're just going to be there, and then I can dial them into really, really tight tolerance if I need to.
one thing that I did just learn is I didn't realize that the Brother was dual contact. I always thought that was RoboDrill's thing and that the Speedios were not.
So
So,
my generation ones, it was an option. So if you had the high torque spindle, which all of mine are, that was a standard thing. But if you had the 16K, they did a field install of a dual contact spindle. And then
okay.
now all of the Speedios being imported are all dual contact. And anything with the new D0 control is dual contact because so many people were asking for it that it just became a standard option.
So, going back to let's beat on Harrison a little bit more. I have thought about doing a Speedio as my next machine, and the only reason I'm leaning towards a Haas or a Doosan is for the rigidity and the stainless. I wasn't sure if a Brother could handle the abuse because of how much trouble I have with the Tormach. I know I say it's a wet noodle, but some of that is because it's a BT30 and what I'm trying to push in stainless. And I have always wondered, and that's always been my hesitation with the Brother was stainless or anything that wasn't or anything that was considered a harder material. Even though I know perfectly well that people will say, like I hear people say, Haas can't cut steel. And it's like, okay, if I can cut stainless on my Tormach and get decently good results, like I know the Haas can do it. Like some people just like to poo-poo things. So like you can probably make any machine cut any material if you sit there and figure it out. But at the same time, there are some machines that are better suited towards certain types of workloads. Like I don't think anyone would deny that either.
From what you've said and like that, the industry that you're in, a 40 taper might serve you a little better. I'm not sure. I'd have to see the parts and the sizes and
Yeah.
all that. But like, I don't know. I run stainless all day. My F600 has been running either 17.4 or 316 for like 2 months now. Besides soft jaws, that's all it's been cutting. So
Okay.
like I can definitely cut stainless and like it'll rip through 316 at a decent clip at least.
That's
I don't know.
encouraging. Yeah. The other thing that I don't know what's going to happen, but I have a potential in with a new customer or a new hookup in a new industry. So I'm right between. I'm in like Walmart's heartlands, and so it's like Walmart, Tyson, Simmons. That's kind of all what's right here, and then I'm close to Tulsa, which is all oil and gas, and all their stuff is massive. And I have made some contacts with some people, and I'm going to try to have a. I was going to already have a dinner planned with a guy that's over in that area, but he got into a car crash with his mother, and so that's been delayed like a month. Um, and so if I can get over into that area, I might be getting into bigger stuff as well, which is also what's making me lean towards like a Doosan or a Haas that's a 40 taper.
Yeah.
Because whenever we get it, I don't know how fast we're going to grow as a business. If things continue at the rate they're going, we'll grow really fast, but I can't count on that. And so I know that if I get whatever machine I get, I want it to be a Swiss Army knife until I get comfortable and can start specializing.
Right. Well, the benefits I will say of a Doosan, because I've run a D&M 5700 and they are dual contact standard, I believe. And dual
Mm-hmm.
contact, even if you're not looking for the rigidity increase, the fact that it has a face to seat against means that you get really consistent Z's. And that I think is the biggest benefit that
Oh,
I've seen. Because like no matter
that's a good
what
point.
on a steep taper machine, as the spindle gets hot, the taper grows. And so the tool will fall into that taper more. You know, it's only a couple thou, but if you're trying to hold, like my general shop tolerance is plus or minus 2 thou. And like if I'm trying to hold plus or minus 2 thou and my tool's moving a few thou and every tool is moving a few thou, like that's going to be a problem. So just having dual contact alone for the consistent Z is really nice. And I found the Doosan's to be a fairly rigid machine. Like it made good cuts and their spindles are pretty nice. Yeah, I don't know. I think that either way, coming from a Tormach, like anything is
It's
going to
going to be
be
night and day
pretty
difference.
amazing. So
Yeah.
no matter what you choose, you're going to love it, I think.
Have you heard much between the DNMs versus the SVMs?
The SVMs weren't around when we bought the DNM at my last job. So I've
Okay,
heard from what I've seen, the SVMs just kind of focused on more of a high speed machine. Like it's like their SS kind of machines.
gotcha. Because it's
I don't think
actually cheaper than
right.
the DNMs.
Which makes
So
me think that maybe it's just smaller rails and it's a little less
yeah,
rigid. I haven't really looked into what the difference is there, though.
yeah. I know Titans of CNC was pushing them pretty hard for a little bit, um, saying that Doosan's here, Haas step aside, kind of videos.
Right. Well, I know. I think Kelvin bought one at I want to say Urban Survival Gear, but it's whatever his.
Smooth precision pens or something like
Thank
that
you.
now.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I meant. And he seemed to really like it coming from Haas's, so maybe he's a good person to reach out to.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't really know much about the SVMs. I haven't looked into Doosan much since I was at my last job.
Okay. Well, I might have to look into that because I have had a lot of issues with Z in my Tormach. I've attributed it to the floppiness of it, but it might be more of just how much growth there is throughout the day in the spindle because I've seen it grow by as much as 3 thou or change as much as 3 thou.
Well, that's probably the C-frame too. Like I notice a few thou of growth in our brothers from cold to warm. So I get them really warm right at the beginning of the day, and then they're rock steady. But yeah, if you're slowly heating up a C-frame machine, the head's going to move on you a few thou, and the taper is going to move on you. Like there's so many places for error to stack up that it's, who knows where it's actually coming from.
Yeah. Z is consistently the hardest measurement for me to hit on that machine. No matter anything else. Like
I can never have that issue.
I can hit X and Y pretty much all day long. Z is the one that I always fight. So
yeah.
Anyway, Dylan, any final thoughts?
No, just thank you guys so much. Like I told you before this is like my first real appearance on another podcast besides my own. So it was very strange and fun being on the other side of it. Well, it's like I don't have to run the show. I don't have to think about. I just answer. This is fun.
Well, I'm sure my mom and our 4 other listeners will enjoy having you. So
we would love to have you back anytime.
Yeah, likewise. Let's make it happen. I'm totally down. Thanks, guys.
I enjoy these types of conversations. And we're very unstructured, and I just enjoy just being able to talk to people and learn as much as I can.
Likewise, yeah. And if you think of anything that you wanted to ask me, feel free to reach out afterwards. We can chat on Instagram or whatever. I'm not against that at all. Oh
yeah. Yeah. I need to reach out to more people. Like when I first started, I was reaching AJ's cutting me off.
I was waiting to get played off.
Never mind. I won't be sappy. I enjoy listening to people and meeting new people. Anyways. As AJ has rudely interrupted my thought, we are entering the end of the podcast, so I guess it's my turn to do the outro. So,
and hurry up about it.
Yeah. AJ's tired and needs to go to bed. So, well, guys, those of you who've been listening, we appreciate it. Dylan, thanks for coming on. This has been episode 51 of Taps and Patience, and it's Harrison signing out with... Oh man, I'm losing train of thought. Harrison with Precision Ingenuity signing out with AJ from Design the Everything and our guest Dylan from Proteum Machining.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.